Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Squirm. Today we're going to be doing episode 3 of recent horror watches. So every time I watch 10 horror movies, I come on here and give you my quick fire thoughts about them. They can be new releases, older releases, documentaries, TV shows, anything horror related. You know, they're pretty random picks really, but I think that's the enjoyment of the video. And I love watching people do things like this, so I thought you guys might enjoy it too. Now, if you want to see episode 1 and 2, that will be in the link down below in my recent horror watches playlist. And don't forget to stay tuned until the end, where I give you my pick of the bunch, the best of these 10 horror watches. So let's just get into it now with the first thing I watched in this episode. First up, I watched a horror documentary called Living with Chucky. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I've been getting into my horror documentaries lately. I recently watched Never Sleep Again. I reviewed it on the channel along with Stephen King on Screen, and I recently watched Pennywise, the story of it. And I just find these so fascinating and they're so fun to watch. And this was no different. So I am a big Chucky fan. Nightmare on Elm Street and the Chucky franchise are probably my two favourite horror franchises. You know, I really don't know which one I prefer because they're both very consistent, even though they have one or two bad movies in there, but I can watch them all and have fun. So this was just a real nostalgia trip for me, and it takes the same formulaic path as Never Sleep Again does. So we start with the Child's Play, the first movie, and then we move on to the second movie, the third, and so on, and it gives you fun little facts and details about each movie, and that for me was just something I could sit back, relax and just have so much fun with, because I grew up with these films as a kid. And if you're a fan of the Child Play franchise, I definitely recommend giving this a go. This is directed by Kyra Elise Gardner, and she is the daughter of one of the special effects coordinators who worked on most of the Chucky films. He's a big part of the Chucky family, and she gets to interview all the cast members and stuff. And then towards the end of the documentary, it does give you her view on how she's grew up with Chucky and how her relationship with her dad is when he's working on the sets of the Chucky movies and stuff like that. And we hear from Brad Dourif, you know, Jennifer Tilly's in there, even the girl who plays Kyle. Really sorry I forgot her name. You know, characters like that. Young Andy Barclay, who's all grown up now, he's in there. And we just hear from most of the cast members who are in these films. And it was like the Never Sleep Again documentary, like I said, but it wasn't as long. This was less than 2 hours, whereas that was 4 hours. So I kind of wish we had a bit of a longer runtime there, because I didn't want this to end. I was really having fun with it. My biggest gripe with it was some of the movies do tend to get less screen time than the others. So we got like 15 minutes of Child's Play, 15 minutes of Child's Play 2, and then we had Child's Play 3. And I think we got about 2 minutes of this at most. So it was very inconsistent with how much time they gave to each movie, which was a bit of a shame, because that's what I loved about Never Sleep Again. It was equally given the same amount of time to each movie. And here, some of the sequels kind of got shot on a little bit there. And last half an hour wasn't really about the movies. It was more to do with the director and, you know, how the Chucky family had come together. But that was still interesting, really. I just wish it was a bit of a longer documentary, but it was still very well put together and stuff. There may be a chance I review this on the channel, because I've done a couple of documentaries, so look out for that. It's not a guarantee, but maybe there will be a review of this coming. But I had a good fun time with this, and you know, bring on the next horror documentary. So that is Living with Chucky. Next up, we have a revenge thriller / horror called Becky. Now, there is a movie called Wrath of Becky coming out this year, and when I read about it, it really sounded like it was up my street. However, I didn't realise it was a sequel until I seen more people talk about it, so I went back and watched the original first. Wrath of Becky is not in this video, I haven't got to it yet, but I did watch this original one from 2020 that came straight to Netflix, I believe. Now, this stars Lulu Wilson, who goes to a cabin with her dad and his new wife and their son. And she's really not vibing with it at all. She doesn't really like her dad's new soon-to-be wife, should I say. And she's a little bit of a rebel, you know. She's a little bit of an angry kid, if you like. And Kevin James, who's broke out of prison, and his friends decide to infiltrate this cabin because there's something there that they want. And they're murdering people on the way, you know, they threaten the family, and they start to get a little bit physically intimate with violence, if you like, to these family members. And it's up to Lulu Wilson, who is in the Annabelle Creation film. She was the main protagonist of that movie, to sort of get some revenge on her family and basically take these guys on in a Home Alone type deal movie, if you like, with her family hostage. I thought this was a pretty simple film. I felt like I'd seen it all done before. It was fun enough. I had a fun time with some of the violent deaths and gore in this. My biggest problem with it was it just felt very, very repetitive, where there wasn't much thought or heart or variety in the story. It was just felt like a movie that you knew where it was going. It was all pretty predictable, and that's how it played out. And Kevin James, for me, is not a great villain. I didn't like him in this movie at all, really. He just doesn't suit being this foul talking bad guy who's killing people and stuff. I just can't see him as that character. I really don't want to see him as a villain again. He just didn't suit the role for me. But Lulu Wilson was awesome as Becky in this. They say the name Becky way too many times. There's like every other scene, "Where are you, Becky? I'm coming for you, Becky." That's all you hear in the movie. But overall, it was a fun time. It was a simple enough film. And if you like these sort of revenge thrillers, I recommend it, but I'm looking forward to Wrath of Becky. I've heard it's a little bit better. So that is Becky. Next up, I watched the 5th entry in the Insidious franchise, Insidious The Red Door. I actually went to cinema to watch this one, and I've done a full review for this one on the channel, and that'll be down below if you want to check it out in the description. Now, I didn't hold high hopes for this going in. I pretty much thought the Insidious franchise was dead. And they brought it back because it makes money, obviously. But Patrick Wilson directed this one, gave me a little bit of intrigue, and I thought, okay, there might be something to say here. Has he got a new vision to go with on this movie? We'll find out. And overall, I do think Patrick Wilson done some really good directional moments with jump scares and stuff. There was a moment in an MRI machine, which was really good, probably the best moment of the movie. And he's having some squabbles with his son, and their memory has been wiped of the theatre, if you like, and they can't really remember 9 years ago where it was all a little bit of a blur. And it's up to Patrick Wilson to try and sort of work out what happened there. And his son the theatre starts to come back into his life while he's at college. And it's up to them to sort of work together, try and figure out what's happened. Big problem with this movie is we already know what's happened with the theatre and how it comes about, and it was retreading old ground again. So it just felt like the first movie done all over again, whereas Dalton's in college in this one. That's what it felt like. There was no real excitement about finding out things about the theatre and stuff because we already knew it all. And it just felt like a bit of a cheap horror movie in the end. I mean, it's probably one of my least favourites in the Insidious franchise, next to number 2 there. I actually enjoyed The Last Key more than this. It just didn't do much for me. The first half of the movie was definitely better, but I think that's the case with all the Insidious movies. It's the build-up, it's the anticipation, it's the tension that gets me with these films. When everything's revealed, I sort of tend to lose ground with it. And I just don't know if it's the theatre itself, the whole look of it, the demons don't really interest me that much. I always prefer the first half of the films, and that was the case here. But if you want to hear my full thoughts on that, like I said, the link will be down below. That is Insidious The Red Door. Next up, I watched 1958's Dracula. Now, I was on a live stream with my friend Alan, and this is one of his favourite horror movies, and it's a horror movie that I'd always wanted to see. So before I went on that live stream, I decided to give this a go. And Christopher Lee is a great actor, so I was really intrigued to see his version of Dracula. And I had a good time with this one as well. I loved the old-fashioned look of the movie. I loved how it had that signature hammer tone going through it throughout with all the music, the sound effects and stuff that really make it creepy and scary. And this basically sees this doctor, Jonathan Harker, who it's I think he's killed by Dracula in the movie right at the start, and it's up to Dr. Van Helsing, played by Peter Cushing, to go and investigate what's happened and put a stop to Dracula once and for all. It was a cool little story. It absolutely flew by. I think this was only like 80 minutes long or something. Loved the whole look of Dracula's castle and stuff. The actors really putting the performances in. You can tell they're just fully invested in the movie, and Christopher Lee as Dracula was great. I really enjoyed the start of the movie where he turns up with all the blood on his face. I know that's an iconic horror movie moment. My biggest gripe with this, I wish Christopher Lee was in it a little bit more. There are large segments where he just isn't there. But overall, this was a pretty fun Dracula film. It hasn't really turned me into a big mad Dracula fan, although I'm looking forward to that film coming soon, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which should be fun. But oh yeah, this was a classic horror movie that I'm finally glad to have seen. So that is Dracula. Next up, I watched the Video Nasty movie, House on the Edge of the Park. Now, I recently bought the 4K for this from 88 Films, and I was intrigued to check it out. The picture quality was awesome, by the way. But this is one I've always wanted to see. I really do want to see all the Video Nasties I can, and I've got a little ranking list on my Letterboxd there. I'll leave my Letterboxd down below if you want to check that out as well. But this basically follows these two guys, one of them played by David Hess, and his friend who's mentally not all there, really. And they get invited to this party with all these rich folks, and the rich folks have really only invited them to sort of take the piss out of them, basically, and make fun of them, and lead them on into situations that, you know, they're sort of bullying them, really, because they're just kind of looking down on them. Although the movie does get into things that, you know, plays out a little bit better within the story. There is something in the third act that relates to this a lot more, which I'm not going to get into if you haven't seen the movie, but I thought it was quite clever. But David Hess in this is having none of this. I think his name's David Hess, who played the guy in Last House on the Left. He is having none of this, and he sort of realizes in the first act that they are being taken for a ride. So he turns the tables on these rich folks and decides to sort of torture them and humiliate them instead. And there's a lot of rapey moments in this movie, I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's just women being totally degraded in this film, like a lot of them Video Nasties do. So if that's not your sort of thing, I would steer clear. But I'm not going to lie, I thought there was going to be a lot more violence and killings in this movie, but there is hardly any. It's more just to do with mental torture and sort of sexual torture, if you like. I believe that this was cut for 11 minutes before it finally got past uncut just a couple of years ago. 11 minutes. I can only imagine it's all the rape scenes, because there is a lot of them in this film. But apart from them scenes, really, which were just doing absolutely nothing for me, I still had a little bit of fun with this. There was some funny dialogue. There was some cool little characters within the film, and I liked how the third act played out. It's nothing great. It's got that tone where bad filmmaking comes into play and stuff, and some bad editing and stuff like that. But it's one of the better Video Nasties I've seen, and I had an okay time with it. There may be a review for this coming on the channel in full. I'm planning on reviewing every Video Nasty that I watch, so look out for that. Can't promise it, but maybe there will be a review of this coming. So that is House on the Edge of the Park. Next up, we have Sleepaway Camp. Now, this was a first-time watch for me, even though I knew the iconic ending and twist going into the movie, but it didn't really take too much away from me. I just felt like a summer camp slasher movie that I could just sit back, relax to, and have fun with, and this one delivered. Not very well made, some bad acting in there, especially the crazy aunt in this movie, but that is part of the charm of these cheesy 80s slashers for me. I can get on board with all that, because sometimes I just need these type of movies in my life. The films I grew up with, and I was surprised I hadn't got to this one until now. Now, this follows Angela and her cousin Ricky going to summer camp, and basically some murders start to happen, and basically that's the story. But the character of Angela, played by Felicia Rose, was awesome. She's a mute for most of this movie, and I love how she just stared at people. The cast and crew really got her spot on, the way she just looks at people. I mean, she can just intimidate someone by staring at them, and they're getting angry because she won't answer their questions, and she just carries on staring. I thought that was absolutely hilarious. Some creative kills in here, especially where this fat paedophile just gets this boiled water poured on him. I mean, that was one of the best kills in a movie. But some of the movies were really cheesy as well. Like, some kid got drowned at one point, and he's just waving as his arm goes under the water and stuff like that. And the iconic ending, for me, I don't think it was all that amazing. I mean, I probably wouldn't have seen it coming. I don't think anyone did when they first watched the film. And maybe because I knew going in what it was, but I just don't think it actually changes the events of the film all that too much. And I will explain that more in my full review, which I'll leave down below if you want to check it out, because I have reviewed this on the channel. So if you want to see my spoiler review of Sleepaway Camp. That'll be in the description down below as well. But overall, I enjoyed Sleepaway Camp. So that is my next horror watch, Sleepaway Camp. Next up, we have Bedbox Barcelona. Now, I really thought the first Bird Box was quite a clever film for a Netflix original, and it was one of the better Netflix originals that I'd seen. I loved the concept of not being able to look at these things that are taking over the world, otherwise you just become the crazy person who kills themselves. I thought that concept was awesome, so I was definitely up for watching this one, and unfortunately this one is nowhere near as good as the first. I liked how we are following more of an antagonist throughout this film. I don't want to say too much more than that, but first 25 minutes I was like, oh my god, this movie has actually is playing it differently here. You know, it's not just following the first movie, it's doing something a little bit different. I was very interested in the main character. Like I said, he was a bit of an antagonist, and I thought, what's he up to here? What's he trying to do? In the middle of the movie, it just started to get really, really slow and boring. And the third act, it just falls apart. It is only really the first 25 minutes, half an hour, that are any good in this film. And I thought we were onto something here, like a hidden gem of a movie. But overall, it's kind of a boring film and a very abrupt ending that really I couldn't get my head around. I was like, what was that all about? And I just think it tries to be a little bit too clever. Overall, the location of Barcelona being taken over and being in this post-apocalyptic world looked awesome. I thought it was great cinematography and stuff like that, but it was just a very drab, dull, and boring film. Like I've said it's boring many times, but that was the main thing I took out of it. I just wasn't really enjoying this movie after that first act. So if you like the first one, it might be worth checking out. But if you wasn't a fan of that, you're definitely not going to like this one, in my opinion. One of the lesser favourite films of the year, down the bottom end. So that is Bedbox Barcelona. Next up, I watched Rectum II. Now, Rectum is a really great found footage film, and arguably this is filmed even better than that. But I think my main problem with this is I watched it too late in life, maybe, or maybe it just wasn't as good as the first one overall. But I just see a lot of people say that it is. But I just feel like I've seen the found footage aspect done way better in later movies, like from 2 or 3 years ago. And this came out, was it like 10 years ago or something? So I didn't really enjoy this film. I was just kind of over the ending of the first one, and I just don't think it needed a sequel, and this one just tries to go into a little bit too much more territory. Now, I don't mind when sequels try something different. Like I said with Bedbox Barcelona, I was enjoying that first 30 minutes and stuff because it's trying something different, but the direction they take has got to be a good one, and here it wasn't really. This was more to do with demonic possession, like these zombies had been possessed by this spirit and stuff, and they could transfer the thing that's inside them to other characters. I don't want to give too much away, but the climactic ending will explain that more. And it's just about these people going in the next night to investigate the hotel from the first movie, or the apartment. But like I said, it just felt like I'd seen it all done before and in better ways. It was done well, but I just think found footage horror has come a lot more of a better way now in terms of quality, and Rectum II was just kind of that middle of the road for me. I thought I was really going to enjoy this, but overall the first is the better movie, and this one I just didn't care too much for. There was no characters to really latch on to. It was just, yeah, we made some money on that Rec film, let's do it again. That's what it felt like to me. So unfortunately, I didn't love Rectum II. Next up, we have Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers. Now, I just wanted to know what had happened after the first film. Was it going to go to the same camp? Was it going to have the same killer and stuff? I just kind of wanted that summer camp slasher vibe back and watching it again, because I enjoyed the first one so much that I just wanted to sit back and watch another summer camp slasher, but the continuation of the first film, which I really enjoyed. I wanted to see how it all played out. Now, I'm not going to name the killer in this movie because it is the same killer as the first film, but he, I'm not going to say, was the best thing about this entire film. I just had so much fun with this character, and he was just absolutely bizarre. the way they acted. It's really hard to not say she or he, which one it is. So I'm just going to kind of try and talk about something else with this movie now. But that character was definitely the best part of this movie. But there was some really fun kills here. The body count is way higher in this movie. I mean, it kind of trebles the first film. There's so many bad characters in here, like bad acted characters. But again, that's part of the charm for me. And this was a much more funnier film. This is definitely more of a horror comedy, where the first one tried to be more horror. This one just tried to have fun. There was a scene in this film where people dress up as Freddy and Jason to scare the other campers. I'm not even joking. And then the main killer of the movie comes dressed as Leatherface and starts taking everyone out. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I really, really enjoyed this film. I have not watched the third one yet, but I'm going to be watching that one pretty soon. So that'll be on next episodes. Was it as fun as the first film? I thought it was definitely more fun. Not a better movie overall, but I would say I would rewatch this one over the first one, definitely. Even though the first one was better put together and stuff, because there is some bad things about Sleepaway Camp 2, which you'll see in my review, in my Sleepaway Camp playlist down below, if you want to check it out. But the fun factor was there. The rewatchability is there. I'm definitely going to be picking this up on Blu-ray at some point. I had a fun time with this. I know it's bad. It's a guilty pleasure film, let's say. That's the best way I can put it. So that is Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers. And finally, we do have The Exorcism of Emily Rose. I've owned this one on Blu-ray for quite a while now, and I've heard so many people say that it's a cool little concept on the horror genre. So I knew it was a bit of a courtroom drama / possession film, so that's what it was. I really enjoy it. This is basically about... I really enjoyed that concept of going back and forth, but this is basically about this priest who attempts an exorcism on this girl called Emily Rose, and she dies. And basically the priest is put on trial because he should have referred it to a doctor instead of trying to exorcise these demons out of her. So it's all about him being on trial, and the defense and the prosecution hearing both sides of this story. But we do go back to the farmhouse and stuff where the exorcism is taking place, and I loved how the movie all played out. But what was the added little sprinkle on this was that the courtroom was, or the court case, should I say, was being infiltrated by demons as well. Like the main defense lawyer in this movie, she was having weird visions at night because the demons are in sort of getting in the way of things and stuff like that. I won't say too much, but I just thought it was a pretty cool concept. I didn't love the film. It was a bit of a slow burn, but I enjoyed watching this story play out. It was a good 7 out of 10 movie, and a good a good movie for modern horror audiences. So yeah, that is The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Okay guys, now it is time for my pick of the bunch. Now my pick of the bunch is going to be the first one I talked about here, Living with Chucky. Again, it was just a big nostalgia trip. I love these horror documentaries. If anyone can tell me any more, I would be very much appreciative, because I want to check as many out as I can. Now, I know there's a Camp Crystal Lake Memories, but I'm going to be binging the entire Friday the 13th franchise at some point with my wife, so I'll watch that after I watch the franchise. I'm definitely going to be getting on that, though. So, yeah, I'm going to give it to Living with Chucky. Just great to see Brad Dourif and all the cast and crew talk about how Chucky came about. I really had fun with that. So, yeah, Sleepaway Camp was a close second, but I'm going to go with Living with Chucky. Okay, everyone, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out episodes 1 and 2 down below, along with my Letterboxd and other reviews that I talked about in this video. Please give this video a like. It would really help me out. And if this is your type of thing, if you like horror, please subscribe to this channel, and there'll be plenty more videos to come as well. Thanks so much, everyone. You take care, and I'll see you all in the next video.